Hi, my name is Lauren. I'm 28 years old, and a few weeks ago, something happened that completely upended my world. It began with an unexpected phone call from my father. We hadn't spoken much over the past 3 years, so when his name appeared on my screen, I hesitated before answering. At first, the conversation was filled with awkward pleasantries. But soon, he dropped a bombshell. He needed my help. My sister Rachel and her husband Ben were in serious trouble. To understand why this request shook me to my core, I need to take you back 3 years. Back then, Ben wasn't just Rachel's husband. He was my fiancé. We'd been together since our early 20s, inseparable for years. After 5 years of dating, he proposed during a quiet dinner at our favorite lakeside spot. I thought it was the start of a beautiful life together. But the happiness didn't last long. The day after our engagement, I came home early from work to surprise Ben. I'd bought tickets for a weekend getaway, something I knew he'd love. When I walked into our apartment, I immediately noticed something was off. The air felt heavy. I heard whispers and laughter coming from the living room. When I turned the corner, my heart sank. Rachel and Ben were sitting close together, their hands intertwined. The way they looked at each other told me everything. They didn't notice me at first, but when they did, the shock on their faces quickly turned to guilt. I stood there, frozen, struggling to comprehend what I was seeing. Rachel started crying, and Ben tried to explain, but I didn't want to hear it. I grabbed my keys and left. In the following weeks, the truth came out. Ben confessed that he and Rachel had been seeing each other for months. He claimed he proposed to me out of guilt, hoping it would help him forget her. Rachel, through tears, admitted she couldn't stay away from him. The betrayal was devastating, but my family's reaction made it worse. They tried to justify the relationship, saying, "You can't help who you love." I felt abandoned. Overwhelmed by the betrayal, I left town, cut ties with everyone, and started a new life. Fast forward to now. My father's call dredged up all those painful memories. He explained that Rachel and Ben had started a business that was failing miserably. They'd borrowed money from friends and investors, but were drowning in debt. My parents had been helping financially, but it wasn't enough. Now they were turning to me. "You're the only one who can help," my father said, his voice trembling. I was stunned. The people who had destroyed my life were now asking for my help. I told my father I needed time to think, but deep down, I already knew my answer. The next day, I received a barrage of messages from my family, pleading with me to help Rachel and Ben. They painted a picture of desperation and ruin, but all I could think about was the pain they'd caused me. I decided to stand firm. I messaged my father and explained that I couldn't help, not after everything that had happened. The backlash was immediate. My phone buzzed nonstop with calls and texts accusing me of being heartless. Rachel even had the audacity to message me, saying, "We're family. You owe us this." A week later, things escalated. I came home one evening to find Rachel and Ben waiting outside my door. They looked desperate, but I refused to let them in. Rachel broke down, saying they'd sold everything they owned and still couldn't make ends meet. Ben, on the other hand, was furious, accusing me of being vindictive. When I told them to leave, Ben blocked my way and demanded I sign a document agreeing to help them financially. I refused. He shoved me, and I fell against the wall. Panicked, I grabbed my phone and called the police. Rachel and Ben were arrested for trespassing and assault. The incident left me shaken. The next day, my parents showed up, apologizing profusely for Rachel and Ben's behavior. They admitted they'd been wrong to support their relationship and begged for a chance to rebuild our bond. While I appreciated their apology, I told them I couldn't erase the past. Trust had been broken, and I needed to prioritize my peace. Now, I've cut all ties with Rachel and Ben. My parents and I are slowly rebuilding our relationship, but it's fragile. Therapy has been a lifeline, helping me process the pain and set boundaries. I've learned that walking away is sometimes the only way to protect yourself. Family might be forever, but trust and respect must be earned, not demanded. Meanwhile, Rachel and Ben's situation continues to unravel. Their debts have led to legal troubles, and they're being sued by former investors. Friends who once supported them are distancing themselves. Despite my parents occasionally hinting that I should reconsider, my decision remains firm. I'm focused on building a life filled with peace, dignity, and self-respect. And for the first time in years, I feel free. I reminded them of the hurt I'd endured every time they brought it up. With each conversation, I felt a renewed sense of conviction that I was making the right decision. I wasn't responsible for fixing the mess Rachel and Ben had created. Months passed, and life began to feel normal again. I immersed myself in work, started traveling, and even took up painting as a hobby. During one of these painting sessions, I received an unexpected email from an old college friend, Emily. She had heard about what happened and reached out to offer support and reconnect. Our conversation rekindled a friendship I hadn't realized I missed. It reminded me that not all relationships were destined to end in betrayal. Emily's friendship became a breath of fresh air. We started meeting regularly, sharing stories about our lives, and supporting each other through challenges. Her perspective on my situation was clear. I had every right to protect myself. She reminded me that self-respect wasn't selfish, and her words stayed with me. Around the same time, I began volunteering at a local shelter. Helping others gave me a sense of purpose and helped me heal. It reminded me that, despite the pain I'd endured, I was still capable of compassion and connection. The people I met at the shelter inspired me to focus on the good in my life rather than the bad. As the anniversary of that fateful phone call approached, I reflected on the journey I'd taken over the past year. The pain, anger, and sadness were still there, but they no longer defined me. I had built a new life, one full of hope and possibility. One evening, as I sipped tea on my balcony, I received a text from my mother. She simply wrote, "I'm proud of you." It was a small gesture, but it meant the world to me. It felt like a step toward healing, a sign that perhaps, in time, our relationship could be repaired. Rachel and Ben, however, remained distant. I'd heard through the grapevine that they were still struggling, but I chose not to dwell on it. Their problems were no longer mine to carry. For the first time in years, I felt free. Looking back, I realized that walking away from my family was one of the hardest decisions I'd ever made, but also one of the most important. It taught me the value of self-respect, the necessity of boundaries, and the power of forgiveness, not for others, but for myself. I forgave myself for staying as long as I did, for trusting people who didn't deserve it, and for needing time to heal. Life is far from perfect, but it's mine. And for that, I am deeply grateful.